Hello, and welcome to our first course in The Learning Leader. And I'm so excited to have you here in this course. You will find that everything we do in this community centers around this topic, and that is influence. See, you have influence in everything that you do. Everybody has influence. We have positive influence and we have negative influence. It's how we use our influence that matters. And because you're here in this community, it tells me that you really want to level up your leadership. You want to level up your leadership with your family, with your coworkers, with your friends, and in your community. And you're in the right place. So today's lesson is how do we identify where you're at with your influence level now, and then how do we develop it? So buckle in, let's get started. First thing we're going to talk about is what is influence? Influence is the ability to shape or guide someone's thoughts, behaviors, or actions. It's essential in fostering strong relationships and driving change, and it's essential in personal and professional success. Why does it matter? Like I just said earlier, influence is everywhere. You have influence in everything you do, in your personal life, in your social life, in your work life. So whether you're leading a team, you're building relationships, or you're just trying to motivate a friend, you have influence. Now we're going to have a little fun. We're going to figure out how much influence do you have right now? And the activity we're going to go through today is also going to be an assignment for you because I'm going to have you dive a little deeper with it. But I want you to understand the tools. So as we go through this lesson today, you'll know exactly what you need to do with your assignment. What I want you to do is pull out a blank sheet of paper. It can have lines on it, but if it doesn't have lines, that's great too. Now, what I'm going to tell you is if you have a job, then you're going to do 2 of these graphs. Okay, so make them a little smaller so you can get them on the same page. So I'm going to pull up the whiteboard and I'm going to show you a template that I want you to draw. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to draw a straight line down and a straight line across, kind of like a large L. Only make them about even in length. And I want you to put a 10 at the end of each of the lines that are open and a 1 where they come together. Then at the bottom, write work effort, and along the side, write influence. So we're going to set that aside because now, before we get started on that, I want to kind of explain a little bit more about how we're going to complete this graph. So there's a big misconception out there about work effort, and that's what we're going to nail first. We're going to kind of zone in on that so that you have a better understanding about what work effort is not. A lot of people feel that in order to build influence, they have to put in more work effort. And that means they're working harder, right? They're putting in more time, more effort. They're doing forceful actions. But my friends, that's not the way to influence. And actually, it can be very harmful to a relationship. The reality is, influence isn't about working harder. It's not even about working smarter. It's about quality interactions. It's about intentional actions and mindset shifts. True influence is built on authenticity, emotional intelligence, and consistency. I want you to think for a moment. Think about someone in your past that, has tried to force their influence on you. How did it make you feel? Let me ask you this. Did you actually listen to them? Did you follow them? My guess is you probably didn't. Or if you did, it wasn't willingly. That's the kind of influence we don't want to portray, right? That's really not going to get us anywhere. My mom always told me, you get more bees with honey. And that's exactly how influence works. The more connected we are, the more engaged we are, the more caring we are about other people will connect to us. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move back over to the whiteboard where we're going to talk a little bit more about the rating scale, and I'm going to give you a little bit more detail. So before you put anything on the graph, you're going to listen to what I share first, and then from there, you'll be able to make a better choice with your ratings. I want to talk to you about how do you rate yourself when it comes to work effort. And so I'm going to give you 3 examples. We're going to talk about 3 different ratings. I'm going to give you 3 examples so that this will help you to make a better judgment call as to where you really do fall on this bar. Now, I know you're probably going to say, well, if 1 is bad, 10 is good, I want to be a 10. But don't jump to the conclusions until you understand the definitions. All right. So let's say your work effort is a 2. So right here is your 2. Now, if you're a 2, this is somebody who does the bare minimum, right? They do the bare minimum to get by. They complete tasks only when it's absolutely required, and they often miss deadlines and do so with a low attention to detail, right? So they rarely go beyond what's assigned to them, and they certainly don't seek out additional responsibilities. So if that's you, you're going to be here. Now, let's talk about the person who might be a 5. This person, they meet expectations and they're completing their tasks with deadlines, but they don't necessarily go beyond what's required. And they may do quality work, but then typically they need reminders or guidance to stay on track. And they're not proactive in seeking ways to improve or add value. All right. And then someone who would be an 8 would be someone who is consistently putting in a high level of work. They're often going above and beyond expectations. They take initiative to tackle challenges. They contribute to team projects and are always looking for ways to improve performance. They're willing to take on extra responsibilities and stay engaged, even in difficult situations. So now that you understand what those 3 ratings are, take a moment. Where on a graph do you feel you honestly fall? And I want you to put a dot. Now we're going to talk about the influence line, the vertical line. And so again, I'm going to give you the same 3 ratings, a 2, a 5, and an 8, just so that you can better gauge where you might fall in here. And again, I know you're going to want to be a 10. We all want to be a 10. To be honest with you, most of us won't ever get to a 10. So it's a great thing to strive for, but don't beat yourself up if you're not there, because most of us aren't. Okay. So let's talk about, let's say on this one, say you're a 2 here. Okay. What does a 2 look like? Well, this is a person who really doesn't speak up in group settings, and they tend to avoid initiating conversations. When they do share their opinion, they're often ignored or dismissed. And they may not engage in other people's interests or make an effort to build relationships. Now, let's talk about, what does a 5 look like? If you're a 5, you have moderate influence here, and you contribute to discussions, and you do it in a way that's thoughtful and balanced. And they listen to others, and they provide feedback and can sway opinions if smaller group settings. However, they still struggle to consistently make big impact and may not always be seen as the go-to person for guidance or leadership. Now let's talk about the person who's a level 8. This is somebody who has high influence. They're a trusted advisor and are respected by their peers. They speak with confidence, and often others seek their input before they make a decision. They lead by example and are empathetic and consistently uplift and motivate others. They have a strong ability to rally people around a cause, and their opinions carry significant weight. Now that you know the definitions of those 3 ratings, where would you say your level of influence lies? And to be honest, many of you are probably going to say, I'm probably closer down here, right? And that's okay. That's why you're here. If you're up here, you shouldn't be here. And if you're out here, you don't have the time to be here. So we're not looking for the high overachievers. We're looking for a real assessment. And this is where a lot of people go wrong, right? Because they feel they need to assess themselves higher than they are or lower than they are. And the reality is it doesn't help you either way. So for this example, I'm going to say, let's say my work ethic is an 8. Okay, I'm going to say it's an 8. But I don't really have a ton of influence. I'm probably somewhere about 3. Okay. So now if I do that, that means that I come over here and I'm going to connect it to the 3 here. Okay. So there would be my 3 dot and my 8 dot. So this is my level of influence. And why is that important? Well, once you can visually see your impact, it helps you to understand how much opportunity you're leaving on the table. Again, that's why you're here. And I'm so excited you're here. And I'm so excited you're taking this class. Let's just say you don't really put any more work effort into something, but you start investing in your leadership skills, your self leadership skills, because that's really what it's about. You cannot be a great leader of others until you're a great leader of yourself. And the hardest person to lead is ourselves. So we got to spend a lot of time here, friends. We had to do a lot of work on us. Some of us have been working on ourselves for 30 some years, and we're still a work in progress, right? We're never done. There's never a destination. So let's say over the course of the next year, you invest into this program, right? And you really start to practice a lot of what we're teaching. Let's say you get to a 5. So if that happened and I didn't increase my leadership, my work ethic, now look what happens. Look at the gap we have closed in our influence. My friends, it's that simple. We don't have to go for the 10. We just have to keep moving the level up. We have to keep pushing the boundaries. Here's why it's so important. Okay, here's a leadership lesson for you. You cannot attract and influence a lot of people out here. Your level of influence is right here. So think about that. Everybody you influence for the most part is right here. This is your control center. This is where you have the most impact. You can lead, sure, you can lead out here a little bit, but this is where you have the most impact, especially if you're a leader of an organization, if you're a manager, anything like that. You lead people, you lead a nonprofit, doesn't matter. Here's the power. No one in your organization is going to really be able to outlead you. They're just not going to be able to do it because you hold the leadership lid on the organization. It's why you need to constantly be trying to move it forward. And again, it's why you're here. And I'm so glad. Okay, so now that you've kind of seen what it's going to look like on your graph, and again, this graph is for you. And we're in your homework assignment, you're going to actually get to do an activity that I think is really going to help really hone in accuracy of what you've put on that graph. But let's talk a little bit about, okay, now what? You know you have an opportunity for growth, but now how do you do it? How do you build your influence? Well, there's countless ways. One, being engaged in this community is going to be a big one, but there's a couple things you can do. And these are things that you can start practicing right now, right? You don't need a course for these things, but we do have courses for them. Just going to tell you. The first thing you can do is just be an active listener. Show people your care by really investing in them, locking into their conversations and really asking them good questions, right? And supporting them and building trust and a connection with them. People want to be heard. Most people just want to talk. So think about that. If you want to build your influence, I'll do like we do to my granddaughter. Turn on your listening ears and start listening to the people around you. Another thing, this is one of my favorite, lead by example. I love to share this real quick golden nugget, and you're going to get golden nuggets from me all the time. People do what people see. It doesn't matter what you say. It matters what you do. And it's not just in certain situations. It's in every situation. So think about that. In my coaching program, I often tell people, imagine there is a camera following you everywhere. And quite frankly, we're probably not too far off. But let's just imagine there's a live feed that follows you around all day long. What are people seeing? Not what are people hearing? What are people seeing? Is that feed going to show them somebody they want to follow or someone they want to avoid? You want them to see on that video that you lead by example, that you lead with integrity, that you're consistent in what you do. What are your daily habits? Who are you surrounding yourself with? What are you doing in your free time? Things to consider. Be empathetic and supportive. Understand the emotional needs of others. Now, I'm not telling you to enable them. Understand them, and offer help. Sometimes it can just be that ear, but sometimes they need a little bit more. Another one, this is a big one, build trust and credibility. Do what you say you're going to do. Follow through on commitments. If you can't follow through on commitments, go back and tell them why and own it. Be accountable. That's another one. I love this one. I love accountability because this is one of the things. I'm going to share a fun story. So, in my leadership course that I ran last year, I had one of my students call me up and say, Vicki, I need to have a conversation with you. I need to make you aware that there's a new accountability model out there. And so the one you're running is old. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm like, yeah, sure. Let's talk. So, and she's younger than I am. But she said, you're teaching that you need to be accountable for everything. That's not the way the world works anymore. The new accountability structure is we want to be accountable for the things we want to be accountable for, but nothing else. I thought, this is going to be a fun conversation. And I said, that's interesting. I have not heard this before. Tell me more. And so she went into depth about this and why it's so important and how it's liberating the new, younger generation. And I'm like, okay. And so I kind of started shifting the conversation a bit. And I said to her, I said, share with me, what's your greatest challenge at work? Do you know what she said? I would be able to do my job better if so-and-so would do their job. And I just shared with her, sounds like an accountability issue. And she got real quiet. And then our conversation shifted. And I think she actually had a breakthrough, which is great. My friends, that's not an structure. You can't be accountable for the things you want to be accountable for and nothing else. That's just not going to work. You're certainly not going to grow influence that way. You have to be accountable for everything. And this is why people don't like accountability. They don't want to be held responsible for their mistakes. Ooh, that one probably hurt a few people. And I'm sorry if it did, but I'm not sorry. Because the truth is, who was involved in that mistake? You were. Interestingly enough, you are involved in every decision you make, every action you take, every thought you have. You're there. You can't get away from you, which means you're accountable. When you start changing the frame of what accountability means, and you start understanding that it doesn't make you a weak person to hold yourself accountable to a mistake, it makes you stronger. It makes you much stronger. Because confident people know that mistakes are going to happen. Look at Thomas Edison. He found 9,999 ways the incandescent light bulb wasn't going to work. And he kept going. Change your mindset. So what I want you to do is I want you to take those 5 strategies and I want you to really think about them. And I want you to think about how can you start looking at the relationships you're in this week differently by applying those strategies. Think about what strategy is appropriate for what interaction, and then make an effort to build some more influence there. So now let's kind of wrap this up, okay? And I really just want to say, building influence isn't about working harder. Building influence isn't about quantity. Building influence is about quality. Lock that in. It's about quality. Influence grows from mutual respect, emotional intelligence, and caring. So moving forward, I want you to think about how can you engage in interactions and create more influence in that interaction. There are 2 handouts down below this in this course. And so the first one is the level of influence worksheet. So I want you to go ahead and follow that. And there's instructions in there. And then I would love for you to post in the community, what you learned from that worksheet and what are you going to work on? Okay? Because here's what you're going to learn. We're going to support you. We're going to encourage you and we're going to hold you accountable. Don't worry. There's no corporal punishment if you don't do well. The other thing that you can do is there is a communications worksheet also there. And that's a worksheet that can really help you better connect and influence. It's almost like an influence strategy worksheet to work with another person. And I would challenge you to use that with somebody that, you have a strained relationship. There's a reason why it's not one of your best friends, right? But it's a relationship that's important enough to you that you want to make it stronger. And I want you to use that worksheet to build a strategy of how are you going to approach that, and then execute. I also encourage you, just for fun, because many of you might be journalers. If you are a journaler, another thing you can do is get yourself a clean journal, and every day just write a post in there about the things that you're learning here, not only here, but the things that you've learned in life, what you're grateful for, what you want to work on, what was your greatest win of the day. Starting to keep track of that can sometimes be a great motivator for you on the days that you struggle, because we all have them. And being able to pick up that journal and be able to read some of your growth will just keep you moving forward. You can also lock into the community and tell us when you're struggling and let us support you, because that's exactly why we're here. All right, my friends, the first course is done. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Hope you've gotten value from it. I can't wait to see you in the community.